So I decided to get a hold of GMI, Gospels Ministry International, and see if I could go with them, seeing how I wouldn't have to do training during the summer to go on the trip because I couldn't take time off during the summer because we were just too busy. And then I was assigned to Todd Roberts, who won the pilots over there, and I talked to him, and he said, well, I'll get back to you come November, and we'll see where the Lord leads for you to go. And so November, the summer came and went, November came around, and I went over, he contacted me again, and then the first person that got a hold of him was named Jeff Sutton, and he had a mission trip down in Belize. And so I talked to him for a little bit, and he's like, well, I really am only free to work down there till about, won't be available until about February. And he had a plane he was putting together from scratch, an airplane kit. And he said, I'll get back to you. And November came and went, and I didn't hear back from him at all. And so I contacted Todd Roberts again, and I was like, I still haven't heard back from Jeff Sutton. And he said, do you want me to contact some other people? I'm like, sure. And then I would hear back from David Maycumber, who is in Chad, Africa. And I would end up going down there for my mission trip. And so I decided to check out airline tickets to see what they were like out of Grand Rapids, and they were like $2,300. I'm like, how am I going to be able to afford that? That's a lot of money. So then I checked out Chicago, and that was $2,000. I was like, that's still too pricey. So I did some looking around at different airports, and I finally came up with flying out of JFK. And that was $1,300. So I decided to book the ticket, and then I did my passport last summer, seeing how I knew I was going to be out of country. And then my dad would said to me, do you need a visa? I'm like, I didn't think of that. So I looked it up, and sure enough, I needed to get a visa. And while I was looking around, I also had to find out I need to get yellow fever vaccine. I'm not one for shots, so I tried to get a waiver from my doctor to not get it, and the embassy laughed at it and like, yeah, no. So I tried finding a place that would give it to me, and I looked around and and they're like, yeah, we can give it to you, not till January though. I'm like, that's too late. So I did some more looking around, and then I found a place called Passport Health. And they said, yeah, we can get it. We have an appointment at 2:15 on the 23rd, and Christmas Eve was the last possible time I could get all my paperwork in the mail to have my visa done in time. So I ended up going to work at 3 in the morning and got off in time with an hour to spare to get to my appointment in time. I get over there, get my shots, and they say, okay, here you go. Here's your paperwork to turn in to get your visa. And so I mailed it in, and they give me a call back and say, well, we got your visa back, but it's short by a day. I'm like, no, my trip's gonna be happening January 3rd, and they said, well, we'll run it down to back over there on New Year's Eve, but we don't know if they're open. They might be closed. So I was like, okay, and I was really worried and panicking inside, like, what am I gonna do? I've invested in all this money in all this trip, and now it's on the verge of possibly falling apart. And so I went to GYC, not wanting to focus on the meetings, but it was really hard because of the stress of the passport and the visa and everything else. So I went over there. I went down to GYC and while I was there, I was praying, God, take this off of my mind. I give it to you. I don't want to keep thinking about this. I want to be able to focus on the meetings and enjoy myself down there. And I would be able to get it off my mind for a while, then it would come back, and then it would go away. But anyways, they called me back December 31st, and they told me, well, they're closed. So now we'll have to let you know what the news is on Monday, January 2nd, with me flying out on January 3rd. And was like, no. I hated putting it off for the last minute. I'm like, so January 2nd comes around, and they're like, we'll call you back. And so they end up calling me at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and saying, yeah, we got it straightened out. So what I ended up having them do is, because I wouldn't be able to pick up my house because I had a 10 o'clock flight to JFK and wouldn't have the time to have FedEx send it to me. So I told them to mail it to FedEx Kinko's in New York, and I would pick it up over there. And so I go down to Chicago and board the flight, and like, okay, so now I gotta figure out where the train station is, how to get from there, and then over to Lynbrook is where I had it mailed to. And so I get there, and I get on the train and go down to Jamaica Station is what they call it down there, where you can hop the commuter train. So I went down there and found out that the train was waiting on the tracks. So I went and purchased my ticket, got on the train, and it took off. Pretty much no time to spare. And I'm like, okay, now where is this FedEx Kinko's in Lynbrook? So I'm looking around, trying to find, well, I'm not looking around, but I'm talking to someone else. And so as I'm talking to the gentleman, he's like, I don't know Lynbrook very well, but he hopped on his phone as we neared the station. He's like, it's right there across the street. I was like, good, I don't have to go wandering around town trying to find it, because I couldn't find it on the internet exactly where it was. So I walk over there, pick up my passport, and I got about 5-10 minutes to spare before the train comes by and takes me back to the Jamaica Station. I was like, whew, what a relief, I got this in my hand. Now let's see, now I gotta hurry and get back to the airport. So I get on the train, get back with about 15 minutes to get through with security left before the plane started to board. And they closed the check-in counter. I was like, this is stressful. I didn't like all this adventure to go on the mission trip. So anyways, smooth flight taking off. We get to Paris is how they route me. Then Paris to Douala, Cameroon was where I would have another bump in my trip. And I would miss my connector flight by probably a little over an hour. I had an hour layover, and I got there, and they're like, well, your plane took off already. I was like, what? They're like, your other plane was late coming. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I'd fallen asleep when I sat down, woke up with us in the air. So I get there, I'm like, okay. So there's a guy who runs up to me and says, what do you need? I'm like, I need ASCII Airlines is where I was supposed to go. It's supposed to be my airline to N'Djamena. And so I go talk to them. He's like, we don't have it's Wednesday. And he says, we don't have another flight until Friday. So I was like, no. My host family, David Maycumber, is expecting me on the flight that's already taken off. So I was like worried, trying to figure out, and they're like, well, you'll need to buy a new airline ticket with this company, and they will have a flight at gets you in at 1 in the morning. I'm like, okay, how much is it? About $400. That's 90% of my cash I got on me. And so I was like, okay, so I ended up buying it, and the guy that was showing me to the different places to go and running me here and there is like, well, I'll take you to the hotel. I'm like, how much is the hotel? He's like, $100. I'm like, I don't have that cash on me. He's like, you got a Visa card? I'm like, yeah. So I go to different ATMs, and my Visa card doesn't like the ATMs. Declined, 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 declined. I'm like, well, okay. He's like, okay, we'll take you to the hotel and deal with it in the morning. So we get to the hotel, and I'm like, well, I need to get into to get a hold of my host family and let them know that I missed my connector. Go to get into Facebook, locked out of it because I'm in a foreign country. I'm like, oh, this is not good. So I try my email account, and locked out. I'm in a foreign country. I was like, I don't like this. So I go to bed, wake up in the morning. We go to, back up a little bit. I called my parents up, and they didn't answer. Left a voicemail. I'm like, Mom, Dad, pick up the phone. Nothing. And before I left, I told them, if you don't hear from me, it's a good thing. And so I went to bed, woke up the following morning, and we went to another ATM, and didn't work. And there was a lady there, let me use her phone, called home, and was like, Mom, Dad, hello. And they couldn't hear me, but I could hear them. And so hung up, went back to the hotel. I'm like, well, not much I can do now. So there was a Bible laying there, and I thought it would just be a French Bible. Well, when I looked at it, I just didn't see any English. Well, when I looked at it again, there was English in there. So it was a New Testament Bible only. So I read through the whole book of Matthew, and praying to God that he would impress the host family to be there on my flight, because they didn't know what flight had come, and they knew that I'd missed my airline. So I get there. Back up a little bit. Well, later on in the day, I felt impressed again to call my parents. So I borrow the shuttle driver's phone, and the phone call did go through that time, so I was able to get a hold of them, and my parents were able to get a hold of GMI and let them know that I would be on the 1 o'clock flight into N'Djamena. So I go back to my room, and the hotel company, the hotel I stayed at, the director said, don't worry about the food or the lodging, we'll cover that. And I was really amazed. I was just worried too, like, what were they going to do with me? I don't have the money to pay them. And so God provided and said, well, here. But anyways, I get a hold of my parents, and they were able to wire me some money. And after they got wind that I'd gotten my money, they're like, well, that'll be $160 for the shuttle and $160 for the airline ticket, please. So they took about 80% of my cash I got. And so I leave. I get over to N'Djamena, where my host family is, and I was, as I get through security, I look up, and there's David standing there, and I was really relieved and happy to see him after not being able to talk English really, and not being around anybody that you knew. And we get through, we spend the night, and in the morning we take off, go see the police to register me and let them know that I'm in the country. And then we get down to the airport, and there's wind that the president will be moving later on, and they'll be shutting the airport down at 10:30. And so we hurry trying to do our pre-flight and get everything ready, and they're like, David tells me, well, you'll have to go walk down there, and you'll see an entrance, and if they don't let you inside, they'll just stand out there, and I'll come and get you. So I start walking down there, and I thought that was the entrance to the airport, so I start wandering there, and security's hollering at me. I'm like, okay. And they're like, no, airport, down that way. I'm like, oh, okay. So I walk further down, and come to find out I had tried to enter where the president comes through for the airport. So that's the reason why they didn't like me too well. And so anyways, I get over there, and they're like, well, you need an airline ticket. I'm like, oh, okay. So I wait outside for David to come, and I'm waiting. I'm like, it's taking forever for him to show up. Am I at the right place? Did I need to go further down? Starting to panic. I'm like, well, God, this is in your hands. Oh well. So I waited longer, and he did show up eventually, and I spotted him, and I ran over to him, and he got me through to security, and we got on the plane, and we fire it up, and as soon as it starts up, they're like, airport is closed. And that means sitting at the tarmac for 3 hours waiting for the president's plane to come, and he goes on right away and says, can we have permission for takeoff? We're ready. Short, runway, this and that, and we're waiting for ATC, and their response was like, okay, go ahead. So we're able to take off and get airborne with a short runway, and we get down there, and the following, well, actually, I stayed over in Jonathan and Melody's house while they were here on the States. And then after they showed up, I moved into an 8x8 room with no bathroom and no kitchen. Sarah, David's wife, did all the cooking for me while I was down there. And the second Sabbath, I ended up not feeling too good and sick, and so I try to eat some breakfast. Doesn't stay in me. I go back to bed, and they come and get me, and they take me down to the Adventist hospital. That's about 2 miles down the road, and come to find out I got malaria, and I had pretty much gotten bit the first day when I got into the country to get it that soon. And so they give me some quinine and some other medicines, so I take that, and I feel all better Sunday. And come Sunday, I decided to go help out with some projects, and Monday afternoon I felt sick again. So I took Monday afternoon off and rested up, and just a second. Ah, there we go. And while I was there, the first 2 weeks, I sorted out aircraft parts. And then the third week, I helped out with miscellaneous projects, helping out with the water tower, which I got some pictures of. I'll go through that shortly. And that was about it. And then some lessons that I learned while I was on the trip was you become more dependent on God when you're going on a mission trip, because you don't know what bumps in the road you're going to hit. And when the water pump ran out, we tried to get it working again by taking it out, looking at it. We tried to take it apart, but didn't want to come apart too easily, so we decided to scratch that. Prayed about it, stuck it back in the well. Didn't work. Left it on top. Prayed about it again, stuck it back in the well, and it worked. To get a new water pump down there, you can't just go walk into Lowe's and say, yeah, I'll get a new water pump. You got to call around, find out who sells water pumps, and if you get a bad one, you got to buy another one again. They don't give you an exchange. This is the first church that we went to. It's the chairs are brick, and it's really hard on your back. Oop. And that's the church there. I forget the name of the town that we were in. Yeah. And there's some scenery flying over into where the compound was from N'Djamena. And the river over there. And that's burn control that they were doing. They were burning off an area. And one thing that amazed me is the people down there can walk around after it burns. It's charred, walk around with their bare feet in it. It doesn't faze them at all. And a small village that we flew over. And each village over there has their own language. And they can't really communicate to each other unless you know French, which is the main dialect. So it'd be like Lowell having a different language, Ada having a different language, so on. And this is the concrete forms for the fence that we were working on and putting up. And that's Jonathan Maycumber, David's brother, helping out. He has background in construction. He was down there for a month. I saw him for about 2 weeks before he took off. And welding on the flaps for the hinge so the airplane can fit through. And one of the locals weaving grass to make a basket. And that's work for the water tower, mixing concrete. And this is after I'd left, but they were there hoisting up the tank for the water tower. And that's a Sealand container there that it's supported on. And the people that had gathered to see a plane that had come in to refuel so you could make it the rest of the way to N'Djamena. That's the airplane there. The pilot was having his engine replaced in N'Djamena. And him filling it up. He was north of us. I forget what country he was from. And him getting ready to take off. And that's a bridge over there we had to cross. No railings on it, on the side at all. This is going down to Broome to get some more building supplies. And the fence that they were replacing. And every Thursday they would have what you call Beggar Thursday. People in need would come down and get some food and whatever else they needed. Just some more of the fence. And that's the construction of the fence that's building it. The problem with it was it kept breaking on the hinges. And so I'd left and we hadn't fixed that yet. They were thinking about adding another wheel on the other side of it so that way it wasn't be so much stress. David Maycumber, the guy who came and got me at the airport, working on removing the fence. And the gate, them putting it up. Him and his brother working on it some more. And that's the Sealand container with all the aircraft parts. It took me 2 weeks to sort it out. And cattle, trying to get through all these cattle going down to market to sell and to the slaughterhouse for food. They don't truck their cattle down there, they walk them down, which can take several weeks. And grass that grew up in the middle of the concrete and the road. That was kind of funny. And accident that we had passed, that's the front of the cab. The front where the cab used to be. I think that's it down there in the bottom right. And that's the Airbus A380 double-decker that I flew back in, coming back. And here's the host family, Sarah on the left, David on the right, and their baby, Joel. It's about 6 months old. And that's it. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Dear Jesus, please be with us and help us to draw closer to you and become more like you. And Lord, help us not to worry so much, and that we know that you'll provide for our needs that we have. And thank you for giving us another day of life. In Jesus' name, amen.